Hello, everybody. My name is Evelyn Ibeke, and the aim of this video is to share with you information that I received in an online coaching session that I attended a little while back. It was organized by my company, the company I work for, and it was mainly geared to help the staff maintain emotional and mental well-being during the pandemic. And it was delivered by a well-experienced coach by the name Jenny Goodhand. And with permission, Jenny is kindly allowed people that attended to share this with other individuals, in other groups, and other settings. So I just thought of sharing it, in this community at this time. Um, and basically, it just goes through. So in this video, I'm going to be recapping the four tips that was covered during the presentation, which are tools to help us maintain our mental and emotional state of mind. Um, so we know that the pandemic is an imposed change that's affected all of us in one way or the other. And it's led to fear, it's led to anxiety, it's led to sadness in some cases. And it's important not to bury those emotions, but to learn how to move through them. Um, and one way to move through them is to understand how you're feeling and looking at the change curve. Now, I don't know if some of you have heard about the change curve, but it's quite a popular concept. It was originally designed by a lady called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross back in 1969, and it describes the stages of grief. And although we're not talking about grief at this time, but scientists have discovered that the model works well with anyone who's going through any type of change or major crisis. So I'm going to share my screen and share the presentation that was delivered by Jenny. So hopefully you should still be able to see me and see a copy of the presentation. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to take any credit for this. This was all put together by Jenny Goodhand. And I just feel that a lot of people will benefit from this, especially as it's something that we're all going through together. So moving on, this is what the change curve looks like. And just describe the different emotions that we go through when we're going through any major changes. So it does help us to realize what we're going through, that we're all going through the same thing at the same time, although it could be at different pace and in different ways. So let's unpluck each one of these. So starting with, I'm going to start with the number one emotion that it's common to everyone when a change first happens. It's shock. And it's a sense of, I can't believe this. How is this happening? I remember when we all first heard about the coronavirus, we're thinking, what is that? Why is it now? And that initial shock is a normal response, and it could be due to lack of information. Because I know when we all first heard about it, it's a novel virus. We haven't seen the strain before, and it could be down to fear of the unknown because no one knew where this originated from. There was so much uncertainties, definitely at the early stages. Obviously, a lot of things evolved since it was discovered. It is this first initial stage is often short-lived, and it could cause a decline in morale, a decline in energy and performance in the work setting, in the home setting, definitely in the community as a whole. And then we go on to the second emotion, which is denial. And this is, again, it's quite a common state of mind that people go through when you're going through a change. And it's common to question the situation, why is this happening? Why now? Morale may go up at this stage, communication is the key and it's very important. Obviously, there needs to be a balance between excessive communication, because I think a lot of us did fall a victim to all of the influx of information and the propaganda that were flying all around the social media at the onset of the pandemic. So we need to be careful here to ensure that we strike a balance in the level of information that we allow. Then we move on to a state of anger, and here, you start to feel that anger with what's going on. It's we saw how a lot of governments responded to this. A lot of lockdown conditions were put in place, and that fueled a lot of frustration, a lot of anger between people, within businesses, and in particular, people who haven't had any major changes in their lives find this state, very difficult to cope with. And also, it's very common to blame others. Certainly, a number of people were saying this is all China's fault. They're the one that were eating bats and cooking with this, but this has always been their way of life. We have to remember that. And then we moved from China to start to blame America, and it's all normal it's all normal emotions to exhibit when you're going through a major change. Moving on, you start to come to a stage where you want to bargain with the situation. Yes, we can't go out, but maybe I can stay in my garden and sunbathe. Maybe I can have a walk in the evening. We aren't allowed exercise one time in a day. So you start to bargain. There is frustration building at this time, but you sort of try to make do within the remit of what's allowed. So it's normal to start to bargain at this stage, and then you unfortunately start to feel a decline, go into a depression where you're thinking, hang on, it is real. It becomes very surreal to you that this is almost like a new normal to you. You almost want to fight it because it's not what you used to. And it's not uncommon to feel, deep level of sadness at times, especially when you're in that depression state. But the encouraging thing is to recognize that you're not alone, especially in the number 4 and number 5 emotions, where having to feel that level of frustration and depression. You are not alone. It's something that's affecting the whole world, as it were. So. It's not uncommon to feel deep levels of sadness, like I mentioned before, and to question whether this is really happening. It's good to know that you start to climb up. Your emotions start to climb up from this state, and this is when you start to accept what's happening. Accepting your new reality, that yes, maybe this is what it's going to be moving forward. Maybe this is what our new normal is going to be. You start to feel more optimistic about the whole situation. A feeling of hope, a feeling of trust, and sometimes you even start to see the benefit of what's happening. I know, certainly, I had meetings and where there was a lot of positive feedbacks, and people were saying, it's not very bad after all. We're able to spend more time with our family. We're able to spend time with with our spouses, things that we haven't done in a long time. I'm able to invest more time on myself, develop new skills. So most importantly, get intimate with God once again, because we live in a fast-paced community or life where everything is done on the move. But we've all been forced to sit down and reflect, and a lot of positive has come out of that. And that's coming to that state of acceptance where you're thinking, yes, maybe this is the new normal, maybe this is our new reality, and you start to embrace that. And something to note here is that communication is key at this stage. So you want to be in the know. So it's very important to keep the communication line going in your groups, within your family, check on people. That's very key. And then it just gets better from there, really. The seventh state of emotion is problem solving, where you feel that, yes, what can I do to contribute? What's my part in the future? We know now that there is excessive queues in the supermarkets when you go out there, so you might want to plan that into your routine to get out there quicker, so that you can still get on, do your shopping, and get on with the rest of the day. You want to do things like protecting yourself adequately, having the right PPE when you go out there to ensure that you're not protecting yourself and you're not being a danger to other people as well. So a couple of things I'd like to mention here before I move on is that whilst we're moving through the curve, you can still move backward at any point in time. So you could be problem solving and still find yourself feeling very angry that we found ourselves in this situation. So it's not unusual, it's not uncommon to feel that. It's just recognizing, where, what your emotion is saying or feeling, at that time. Also, um, I'd like to point out that within this big curve, this big change curve that we're looking at as a result of the pandemic, there are other smaller changes that we're going to go through in our different lives or different situations, such as having to work from home. A lot of us have had to work from home. So you're having to adjust to that if you're not used to doing that already. The people that are having to be stuck with their partners 24/7 is something that you're not used to. So some people are having to adjust to that change, and some people are having to adjust to the fact that they can't be in the office to see other people. They have to be stuck in the home all by themselves. Some people are having to get used to the fact that they're not able to see their families as often as they would love to. So there's lots of different changes that is happening within the grand scheme of change, and certainly some people have lost their loved ones to illness, and to the virus. So again, that's one huge change that they'll have to adjust to. So the question is, where are you on the curve? Where your family members are, or your family members and friends. So it would really help to, if you can take time to go through this and identify, what your emotions are saying at this time, and not just to shy away from them, but recognize that it's a moving flow of emotion, and it's quite normal to feel the way you're feeling. So don't chastise yourself. And also, it's necessary to know that if where your family members are. So if you have a spouse who's withdrawn to themselves, you need to be able to support them adequately by identifying where they are on the change curve. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. So here, Jenny shared with us 4 tips and techniques for moving through the curve. And the first was the jam jar metaphor. And she started with those sediments at the bottom, which are the genetic factors. And these are factors, the sediments at the bottom. So the jam jar, to start with, is developed by a scientist in Toronto called Austin. And Jen asks, that we need to think about the jam jar as a mental state. And according to Austin, problem occurs when your jam jar overflows, and it leads to depression, anxiety, OCD, you name it. So looking through those different levels, the genetic factors represent the sediment at the bottom represent those genetic factors that we're born with. And then as we over life, we are exposed to life experiences, emotional factors that start to fill up the jam jar. And what psychologists and counselors do is try to dig around in that jar, in those sediments, looking to improve our situation by removing things from the jar. But what Austin is saying is that you can't do that. In fact, that those sediments are part of who we are. And Austin has suggested that we can enlarge our jam jars to allow us to cope with more, by doing things like connecting with family, exercising, taking up new skills, reading. So there are different things that you can do to help you cope with those life experiences, those situations that we go through. Um, so how can you expand your janja? This is a question that we all need to think about. Certainly in this time of pandemic, there are things that we can do to improve ourselves, improve our mental state. I think for one that this um, sort of time that we have in our hands, I think it's a golden opportunity that it will take a very long time for us to be able to have this sort of time. And I think one of the benefits of it is that we need to, I would encourage that we use it to invest in ourselves, things that you've wanted to do for a long time. This is certainly a time, a downtime that we can fit it into our schedules. So exercising can certainly help us to expand our jam jars. These are just a few things. What would work for everyone would certainly be different, but you need to be able to take time out to evaluate what would work to expand your jam jar. Volunteering could be worth exploring for some people, and just giving yourself more space could be what some people need. So you need to be true to yourself in identifying these things, and to critically ask yourself what's stopping you, because like you said, it's time in our hands that we may never get again. So let's use this to our advantage. So moving on, Jenny also shared with us this next slide, which it talks about the circle of control. There are two circles there. The smaller circle, the white circle, are signify those things that are within our control, and the bigger, the larger circle are those things that we cannot control. So the smaller circle is what I'd like to concentrate on, because these are things that we can do to help us enlarge our jam jar. And these will be different for different people, depending on your situation, on your circumstances. But you, again, it'll be down to us to know what change we need to make to enlarge our jam jar. Now, the next slide expands more on what some of those um, things that are within our control, gives example of those things that are within our control and those that are not. Now these are Jenny's example, but there are certainly things that we can, I'm sure we can all resonate with. I don't know if you can see the slide very well, but the first I'd like to mention here is our attitude. We all have control over our attitude, how we choose to respond to a situation. We have control over how we choose to follow rules. Obviously, when the lockdown rule were imposed, there's some people that really follow this to the letter, and obviously we still had some people that defile that rule. So it's a choice that we all have to make. We have a choice of how much news we allow ourselves to listen to. I know I had to learn the hard way, because I was so curious and I wanted to know what's happening there, that I had too much information overload, I would call it, and it really became very disturbing and gave me so much unrest, and I had to really rein it in and say no, I'm putting an end to this, and it really did help. So these are things that we can control. We can control how much time we spend on social media. We can control what we choose to do or not to do, for that matter. We can control who we virtually socialize with. Obviously, now we have a lot of activities that are being done virtually. So we can certainly control who we choose to connect with virtually. We can control when we work, we can control when we exercise, we can control when we eat. And let's look at, so I don't know what that looks like, what that inner circle looks like for you, but I'm sure you will agree that some of this you can definitely identify with. And so let's quickly look at what the bigger circle looks like. So the first thing I would want to mention here is that we cannot control other people's behavior. We're not responsible for what other people do, so that's completely out of our the remit of what we have a say on. The government activity is another one that we cannot control. Obviously, a lot of the governments globally are responding in different ways. We've seen similar trend, but no one can really have a say on that. We can't control the weather. Sometimes we wish we can, but we certainly cannot. We can only wish for a good weather. Social media feeds, obviously, there's tons of it flying now with all the unrest that is happening again globally. We cannot control the virus itself and how long it's going to last. And certainly, we cannot control what's coming through the news or the economy. Um, so these are things that, it would really eat into us if we had to start worrying about them. So a gratitude diary. This is another thing that Jenny described as one of the tools that we could use to help us enlarge our jam. And here she did describe that it's natural for us to hear and think negatively, but you can force yourself to think more positively. And Jenny expanded that research has shown that when you do this repeatedly, you're more likely to think positively when you're presented with a negative situation. And this kind of helps you. It's a program that helps your brain to be more optimistic, and it helps you to approach problem positively. And we can start by listing 3 things that we're thankful for each day. I would even go as far as saying, write this down. Have a diary where on a daily basis when you wake up, you list those 3 things. It could even be repetitive. It really doesn't matter. And I want to encourage us to start by thinking of 3 things that we're thankful for today. I certainly know that I'm thankful for life. I'm thankful for friends and family. I'm thankful to have a job that still gives me an income. I'm thankful for good health. I'm thankful for my church family, for my church community. The list is endless, really, and I'm sure that you will have an endless list of things to be thankful for also. The next is my very last slide. It's talking about calming breathing. There are several breathing techniques that are available out there, but I'm just going to cover 2. One is what is described on this slide here, and another is one that an NHS expert in our church community shared with us very recently. And by following a simple breathing technique, it's possible to change the oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in our brain. And these affect the parasympathetic system and helps to reduce anxiety alerts. Now, changing our anxiety alerts helps us to change how we think. It helps to make us a lot calmer and helps us to communicate better, think rationally, and make better decisions. So I'm going to the three stages or 3 steps involved. First is you breathe in through your nose, and hold this for on a count of about 3, and then breathe out through your mouth longer than the time that you breathe out, that you've taken your breath in. And just to give you a quick practice, breathe in through the nose. And you can repeat that for as long as you want or you're comfortable with. A second technique is called the 7-11 breathing technique. And with this one, you expel less carbon dioxide because you're not using you're not breathing out through your mouth. You're breathing in and out through your nose only. And you breathe in on a count of 7 and out on a count of 11. And you do this for about 3 to 5 minutes. and you start to get a steady reading. You wouldn't get that reading at the start, and it's advisable not to do this when you're anxious. So again, you can, like I said, you can do this for about 3 to 5 minutes, or as you feel comfortable. Just to recap it's called the 7-11 breathing technique, where you breathe in and out through your mouth, through your nose only, breathing on a count of 7 and out on a count of 11. I'm not going to try that, but I'll encourage you to try whichever technique works for you. That brings me to the end of this session. I hope you've been blessed. I'd like to share Jenny's contact details if you need professional advice. That's Jenny's contact details if you want to seek that. If you do need spiritual counseling, you need prayer, you need somebody to talk to, please contact the Herb Church to let us know, and we would be more than happy to be of support to you. Thank you very much for listening, and hope you have a lovely day. Thank you and God bless.